thank you for those that are joining us. We are here to talk about values today, and specifically how they can complement and even help drive your marketing efforts. So next slide. We've got two presenters today, and I see we've got our fancy technology working. Myself, Shawna, I have been with iContact for 12 years now and am the SVP/General Manager of iContact. And I'm joined in the physical space of Alison Rogers, the founder of Blush Cowork here in Cary, North Carolina. We're really excited to be presenting together today.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So when we were starting to think about what we wanted to present today, values was sort of something that I've been giving some thought to as it pertains to iContact. And Alison and I have had an opportunity to talk about Blush and how they've shown up for Blush. But let's just orient ourselves around how you would define values to begin with. So I think there's several different definitions. And Alison, if you just want to kind of click through three times, I think there's a couple of options here. And for me, they're a combination of these three things and more likely, but really I think it comes down to a set of beliefs, a set of principles that you're using as a filter, you're using as a guiding kind of star around the decisions you make. And that's not just in companies or in business, but even personally. You have personal values, you have professional values, but I think we all can agree they are a set of principles and beliefs in which we're making decisions personally and professionally moving forward. So that is sort of what we're defining as a value. So let's talk about why they're even important to begin with. Next alignment. The first is really aligning for purpose with your team. And I've really stopped to think about this recently. And I asked myself, and I've asked some of my team members this question. I would encourage you to do the same within your organization as well, as what is standing in our way of our ability to perform? And I'm saying that that's kind of vague, but performing can be defined in several different ways. But what is standing in our way in our organization at iContact, in your organization at Blush Cowork, Alison, like what's standing in our way? And what was interesting in some of the responses that I got from some of my team members and even myself is there's a little bit of do our team members feel as though they have purpose? Do they feel as though we're focused on initiatives that drive purpose for them and for the business? So I think really the first one for me on values is, are we providing alignment and purpose for our teams? And that's what values can bring. Second is decision filter. So when I think about this one, I think about if one of your values was wow the customer. Hint, we might be talking about that later. If it was wow the customer and you were at a decision point where you had to choose between a path that was subpar customer experience versus something that would be holding that bar high and wowing the customer, that value would give you the opportunity to really run that filter first and say, it does not align with what our values are. We're not going to go with the subpar customer experience. We're going to stay the course on the thing that might take longer or cost more money, but it's more aligned with our values. So the decision filter, I think, is very important around values. The third is accountability. So oftentimes with my team at iContact, we use our values when we give feedback sessions. Like if we are feeling as though we're not seeing somebody engage as an owner or operate with urgency, those are, and again, I'm giving you some sneaks for later in the presentation, but those are talk tracks that really align to some values that we've defined as an organization and helps you hold folks accountable, helps you hold vendors accountable too. If you want to start to align your values externally as well, like you don't bring on vendors that don't align with your values. I think that's very important around that as well. And the last is company culture is ultimately your values in action. I feel like anytime I'm interviewing folks, I often get the question of what is your company's culture? And I find that to be ironically a very challenging answer, because it's not like we have a ping pong table and we provide snacks in the break room. That's not culture. And these days, since we're all so virtual, we are sitting, Alice and I are lucky to be sitting in the same space together, but many of us are sitting at our homes working these days. Culture is no longer what's in the office. So culture, a lot of times, is how you've decided to define the mission and the values along with that for your teams. So next slide. Well, why do we care in marketing, right? Why are values important when we're talking about our business? And we talked a little bit about the 4 points earlier that do tie into the business, but even more so, if I think about my purchasing behavior just as an individual consumer of late, and how I hear others speak as well, folks very much want to be connected to a brand that has similar beliefs that resonate with them. And we're going to talk through in the next handful of slides examples of that with big brands that you know, probably some brands that you may not know. And if you don't know some of them, maybe you'll give them a Google later, and it might be something that you're going to look into, and it could be an interesting distraction for you. But ultimately, why we care is 63% of consumers are buying based off those things, based off of values, based off of a message resonating with them, a belief system resonating with them. So. All right, so here are some examples. The first one, very big brand that we all know, is Patagonia. This is a snippet from their Instagram. I think they've been very clear and loud, and you've heard this in the news, where Earth is now their only shareholder. So what does that mean? That's not actually a value, but it is a very defined mission that aligns with a value. And we're looking at an example of an Instagram post, and they're saying, why are we talking about politics? Well, because every livable planet needs a vote. So I think that's a really interesting tie. And if we go to the next slide, they have 4 core values that they're using as guiding principles within their business, which I think can align very much to many businesses: build the best product, cause no harm in doing so, use the business to protect nature, and not bound by convention. So I think those are really clear points that Patagonia has established, along with being very public around their only shareholder is Earth. So it's a great example of values being applied in their social media specifically. I imagine there are other ways too. You'll probably start to see those more after this presentation if you're looking at your emails, and we just gave you Instagram, but I imagine Twitter and Facebook have other examples as well. Next slide. So Rothy's. Rothy's, I think, has kind of been a brand that has come up in the past, maybe 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. And I actually happen to be wearing a pair of Rothy's right now, so they're a go-to shoe for me. They make shoes out of recycled plastic water bottles. So this isn't a value necessarily. I think it's probably a mission/value statement that we have up here right now for you to look at. But the point is that they are very much aligned with trying to do no harm to the earth, and in fact find ways to take what we have created and repurpose and reuse that. And they've really expanded their business over time. So if we go to the next slide, here's an example of their Facebook page. And what I really love about this is that they're spotlighting, if you look on the right, and a picture would I think a picture is on the bottom, but we just kind of cut it off. A picture is also nice as well, but they're spotlighting people. So meet Zainab, a recipe developer, a food editor, a content creator, and they're kind of going through her story. They've done a YouTube video here. Meet Camille at the bottom. She's a chef and a food artist. So they're really showcasing how their product is being applied in the day-to-day lives of the folks that are actually purchasing and using them, which is a really good connective tissue, along with how they're supporting the earth as well. So, next slide. Bombas, sock company. I actually listened to their How I Built This episode recently. It's a great listen if anybody is a big podcaster on the call. What they have done is really built a business around giving. It's a little bit like Tom's, where for every sock bought, they also donate a sock. And this came from the founder's desire to really support the homeless. And the number one thing that's asked for in homeless shelters are socks, which is probably not a thing that we would normally think of. So here's a couple of examples of their Twitter page. They've got Great Place to Work, one of the greatest places to work in the US, which is a great testament to sort of how they are creating a culture and values that people are aligned with. They also have a little bit of a snippet from actual shelters that they've donated socks, and then an article around their business as well. So doing a great job of sort of sharing that message. Again, this isn't a bulleted list of values that we have for Bombas, but more of a mission statement that I think we have values that really pull from it. Make a purchase and make a difference. Like that's the generic mission statement, and how they're executing that on a daily basis is really making sure that they're present and engaged with their community around that. So next slide. So 15.5 is a software company that's focused on employee engagement. And I would say there's an HR component to it as well. They have many values, actually, probably the longest of the list that we've seen thus far. But, and then we're not going to read through all of them, but I think what's really important is as we look at their LinkedIn presence, you can start to see where those show up. If we go to the next slide, you start to see where some of those show up, and they do an incredible job. I happen to follow them on LinkedIn, of sharing consistently around topics that will engage with people and really supporting the people component of that. So I have to give them a shout out for the amount of content they push and how supportive that is in their community as well. And now I'm going to transition this over to Alison, who's going to walk us through the Blush co-work concept, but really the values and how that's driving your decisions.
All right. Well, Blush Co-work, and you can see it represented really simply with this graphic here. It's a woman-focused co-working space, but also community, and we have on-site childcare. And our ultimate kind of mission is to provide that space in between the office and working from home, where your needs are taken care of and you're able to be your most productive self. So our values are right here. So Blush is a safe, empowering place for women to network, learn, and create, and join with other people through collaborating, co-working, and events. And we ask that our members adhere to these values as well as we do. So we use these as guiding values, but we ask everyone in our community to also take these and use these as kind of their goal, their mission. So we want to recognize and encourage the work of all women, and basically include everybody, especially women though, and because we believe that what you do is valuable, necessary, and amazing. We obviously want to provide a safe space for everyone and for their work and for people to connect with each other. We want to treat each member and guest with respect and integrity, and we want all our members and guests to also do that. And we'd like to honor everyone's personal and professional values by providing a space free of hate and abuse and harassment of any kind. And that kind of goes along with the safe space here. And we want to celebrate everything, personal, professional, your life milestones. Our values were really created because I and my former co-founder really thought about what was lacking in some of the workplaces we'd been in, and even some of the companies and brands that we interacted with in the past. So obviously we want to start with a baseline of respect. I think that's pretty basic, but you'd be surprised. And then no fear of harassment, connection with each other in the community. And that was especially important coming out of COVID, where a lot of people felt, a disconnect from their coworkers and their community, physically, and, because of the physical distance between us during that time. And then recognition and celebration, that's something that we believe is an important part of being able to come together as a community and grow personally and professionally. So our values kind of guide like Shawna said, guide everything we do, all of our activities, all of our messages, whether it be marketing messages or kind of what we live and model here in the space. So you can see.
Alison,
yes.
What it just reminded me of this slide. You had a story about a time in which you had to make a choice around aligning to your values or not. So would you mind sharing that?
Sure. So very early on, when we were just opening the space, I had one of our sitters, because we do have 2 sitters on site. One of our sitters had a childcare issue, and that's kind of, what we do here. We help people take care of those issues, but she wanted to be able to bring her child with her into the space while she was working as a sitter, and it actually was against the policy of our childcare partner. But I thought that it really would go against our values, that first value of respecting the work of all women, that if we did not allow her to do that, because we were keeping her from doing her job, if we didn't try to accommodate and let her use the space, like the other people here are meant to use the space. So I was able to lobby for her to be able to bring her daughter for a week while there was that lag in childcare. And, I thought that was a really, that was a way that I kind of used the values to go against maybe even what was expected.
Process.
Right.
That's really what that was the vendor had, and we go back to your vendors sometimes need to align to your values. And
yes.
you could have been like, oh, well, okay, they don't allow that, and tried to do something else. But
right.
Then you took a step back and said, well, wait a minute, our mission here is to support all women. And that includes the folks that are working directly with us. So let me advocate for this. And I think it's an incredible pause that you had to take, and then the action, which I go back to, it's not always easy. That's why we define these values, is so we can use them as that filter for decisions.
Right. It was, it was a little bit difficult to bring up and say, well, we're brand new, but this is our value. We don't have a written policy. We don't have anything like that. You do have a written policy, but saying I would like to work this out.
Yeah.
Because I want to remain true to what we're trying to do. So
100%. I think it's a great example.
And like I mentioned, our values really guide and were the inspiration for our different categories of events. Events are a really important part of being able to engage with our community and bring the people together and just bring people into the space. So we have 4 different types of events here. And I won't go over each, but basically all of them, you can really tie them directly back to one of our values. Such like the example would be the Lunch and Unlearn, where we have a more serious and structured talk with a featured expert speaker that talks about things relating to gender bias or racism or career. So, and you can really take that and match that up to our value of, providing a hate-free and harassment-free space. So.
Absolutely. And folks, if you aren't already, I highly encourage you to follow Blush Co-work on Instagram. I thought later we should have put your handles on underneath your
oh, yes.
your bio, but they do an incredible job of posting the various events. For those that are local in the North Carolina Raleigh area, there's something going on every single week, and it's a really great opportunity to connect in person, especially since we are so virtual these days. All right, what about iContact? We talked about Blush. We've talked about Patagonia and Bombas and Rothy's. What about iContact? So, I've been here 12 years. We're celebrating 20 years next year, which is a really exciting opportunity for us. And we kind of thought this year we go back to the values conversation. I've seen iterations of our values over the past 12 years. We've had a couple different owners who've had different values applied, and then we've kind of come up with our own along the way. But ultimately, we decided we need to go back to our roots. We need to go back to kind of our core set of values that really served us well 15 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago. So we go to the next slide. We are giving our old values a little bit of an update. For the folks that I could grab it quickly, I would. My original badge to get into the building had our values on the back side of it. I still have my original badge. It is in my wallet, and it said wow me. And I always liked how simple and easy it was to remember wow me. And I also like that wow me is the thing I want to do as well. I want to wow my team. I want to wow our customers. I want to wow our prospects, our community, etc. So I love the wow me acronym. I don't think you always want to force a value set into an acronym, but if it does work out, it's a way for folks to remember easily, like, oh, I'm missing the W, which one's the W? But what we've done is taken really what is essentially our core values from when I first joined iContact, and we've tweaked a couple of them. For the most part, this is exactly what it was before, but first is wow the customer. I mentioned that earlier. It is absolutely one of our values. If we are using that as a filter when we're making decisions around our product, around how we service our customers, we start with wow the customer. It's a really great place to orient folks. Operate with urgency. If anybody that's worked with me long enough, this is a big one for me. I don't think anyone as a small business, iContact is a small business in and of itself as well. It has the luxury of time typically. So operating with some urgency, but thoughtfully, I'm with the thoughtful side of it too, is very important. With excellence, this is the one that got a little bit of an update. Making sure that we're kind of always keeping an eye towards setting a high standard for ourselves, our product, the processes, all of it, the whole package. It kind of ties nicely into the wow the customer. Make it better. Let's always kind of take what we've had. This is another one that got a little bit of an update from the previous set of values. I'm not going to tell you what the old one was, the old two were. Make it better is like, I think there's always an opportunity to go into a situation and make it better. I liken it to when I was a kid, somebody saying to me, if you ever borrow something from someone, you should return it in as good, if not better condition. So that make it better is always like a plus one. One of our people see Hank's name quite a bit that follow us at iContact. Hank always says, give it a plus one, right? How can we make it a little bit better? How can we add a little bit more? So make it better. And the last is another one that I use a lot, which is engage as an owner. Again, when we are working towards, competing priorities and lots of things to do. And I don't think anyone on this call today is swimming in resources. Having someone have an idea and also take ownership of that idea, you don't understand as a leader, but even as a business owner, I imagine for you as well, Allison, it's like a rock coming out of your backpack. And what you need in your day-to-day are folks that are able to take the rock out of the backpack. And a great example of that for me just yesterday was I was in a meeting where I said, oh, we really need X. And the leader that was in the room said, actually, this person's already working on that. And the other person in the room said, I see your smile, Shawna. And I was like, yes, because I like it when I hear somebody see the problem, take ownership of the problem, and execute on it. And it's not because it is their job, it's in their job description, but it's because it's the right thing to do. So I think that was a really great example of that person embodying almost all of these values at the end of the day. So there will be more to come on the iContact values. You'll likely see that on social and on our website as we move into 2023, but these are our values. And this is what I really want our team to be holding dear to them and making decisions off of. Next slide. So we've got a couple takeaways. I'm a big fan of what's my to-do? What's my top three? Anybody that knows me well, I love three, no more than that. Nobody's going to do more than that. So the three takeaways that Allison and I had thought as we were putting this slide and presentation together that we would love for you to sort of walk away with is take a look at your current company values. And if you don't have them, that's okay. We gave you some examples that those weren't a list of values, but they were kind of driving mission statements that really helped orient the decisions around that business. So what are your current values? Are they working for you? We gave ours a facelift. Or create some. If you don't have them, that's okay, create some. The second takeaway is you and your team need to actually live these values. The words that you choose to use in the day. I've heard you say it several times around respect all women and support all women. I hear that in the times that I speak with Allison constantly, which I think is fantastic. My team has heard me say, wow, the customer. They've definitely heard me say operate with urgency and engage as an owner. So they need to hear people need to hear those words come out of your mouth. You need to live and embody them as well. And I think the last is, how do you externally amplify that? So if we can internally get the teams focused on that and speaking that language and, giving each other praise when that's happening, then externally it also helps us to amplify it too, because they're going to be engaging with that content as we push that out with social, and they're connected to it as well. And then we can also get our community connected to it too. So really think about how you can amplify those efforts externally via social media. But if we had to summarize today, and Alison, I'm going to let you read this because you and I sat down and really collaborated on this, but I really felt like these were your words, and I would love for you to take a minute to share.
Well, when I thought about, what we were trying to say, I thought, your values can create connection and create a vision for you to follow, and that unites your brand, and that creates opportunities for meaningful engagement, both within your team and then externally as well.
100%. So this is kind of our big summary from this presentation today.
And with that, we want to thank you for attending our webinar on brand values. Please check out our blog, look out for future webinars like this, and also be sure to follow Blush Cowork on Instagram and iContact if you aren't already. Take care.